I mean, thematically, what we're working from is quite a mixed palette, because the period that the play is set in is a very interesting period in American music, regardless. And it is kind of, it's the end of the big jazz bands and swing bands, and a move into a sort of more adventurous territory. We kind of touch on both worlds musically, and the aesthetic is kind of bridging that era in American music, American jazz music in particular.
It's interesting because there's always the importance of showing the difference between Maeve having left and, you know, the freedom in her body, and that's something to really look at as an interesting thing, you know, that she's looking for that freedom and she enjoys that New York freedom, and that needs to be reflected in how she moves and how she dances. I suppose in contrast to the almost poverty in the body of the Irish scenes, you know, where it's oppressed and repressed, and again how that can be really tangible for the audience. So that's really my brief for this production, to just keep that eye and to make sure that those transitions into movement feel very authentic and real, and just to marry those worlds in such a way that the audience can read them clearly.
What's interesting about the play, actually, is that it's kind of divided into two worlds. There's a real world of Maeve Brennan, the writer for The New Yorker, and that whole entourage and existence she had within The New Yorker. And then as well as that, there's the whole world of her writing, which features very much in the play. As you watch the play, her writing is embodied at key moments in the play, so it's brought to life and sort of grows and becomes a bigger player in the narrative. So what we were looking at in those instances was to kind of strike a tonal contrast with the world, the sound world of The New Yorker, and the world of her writing. So there's a bit of theatrical trickery. We mic her at some stage, so when she starts talking about her writing, her voice, because she's mic'd, gets a more personal, intimate quality. So that's something that Annabelle wanted to create, just to get us closer to Maeve's character, Maeve's writing, really, from an oral standpoint.
The movement has to reflect a feeling of modernity and a feeling of, you know, that sort of excitement that was around at the time, this kind of free living, fancy-free kind of, which I suppose was a really big deal at the time. It's not a big deal for us anymore, but it was a really big deal at the time. That it was, and also it was a very different way for women to be. You know, that they were very much coming out of that kind of American position, you know, of the homemaker, Susie Homemaker, or whatever it is, and that kind of independent women, and what they had to do to pave their way in big city with so much competition, and, you know, and probably, even though we look back on that time as very progressive and things were changing, they were probably coming up against a lot of walls. So, yeah, it's about finding a way of bringing that in.
You know, I think Annabelle was kind of, very clear that she kind of wanted something that would evoke the era, but have its own kind of thing as well. And so there's a modern element that we're introducing, that the most immediate reference would be sort of minimalist composers like Steve Reich. That was one of the references that we were looking at as well. So we've tried to weave that into the music, so that it's not just purely a pastiche, if you will, of the music from the era.
I suppose, yeah, Breakfast at Tiffany's is one thing we're looking at, and also looking at a lot of the kind of mambo rhythms and beats, and how that really kind of spurred so many new dances and new ways of partying and having fun, and people hanging out together.